Hey revolutionaries, I'm excited to bring you this week's episode with Aya Shlachter, where we're talking architectural services, hospitality, chocolate in the Philippines, resorts in Dipolog in the Philippines. Oh, I can't wait for you to hear this episode. Aya is the founder and creative force behind MG Shlachter, mgshlachter.com. And if you've been listening to the podcast, I know you've been hearing about it because MG Shlachter is the lead sponsor of Jim Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. So Aya, thank you so much for that. And also, if you've been, watching the Facebook Lives I do every once in a while, she's been on a few times because I want the audience to continue to get to know her and understand how special she is and get to know some of her talents, like making great coffee, which Aya gave us a demonstration of on the Facebook Lives, of course. But she's also a triathlete, a baker, a supermom, wife. I mean, she's got a lot going on, and also an incredible entrepreneur and businesswoman. And in this episode that we recorded at the Ariana Hotel in Dipolog in the Philippines, you'll hear the origin story of MG Shlachter, how she got started in architectural services, how she developed Tablea, her chocolate cafe brand, and all the other things she has going on. Oh, and how the Ariana Hotel got its name. Yes, we go over that. So you're just going to have to listen to the episode for that. But real quick, before we get to the episode, for those of you that know, I'm still in Asia. So I'm here in southern Thailand in... Where am I at? Phuket right now. So it's an island in the Gulf of Thailand. So a few days ago I was in Koh Phi Phi, so I've been knocking around down here. People that ask me about the coronavirus and what's going on over here in Asia. So no, I do not have the coronavirus. Thank goodness. And I haven't seen that. There hasn't been that many cases reported here in Thailand, which is good. So I feel like I've been fairly isolated from the virus itself, although you see really the massive effects here in Thailand on the tourism industry. So, I'm in a touristy spot, Phuket right now, and I can tell you the bars and restaurants are pretty empty, and there's no big, buses full of the Chinese tourists on the streets that you would normally see. So things are pretty down. Things are hurting just, tourism-wise here in Thailand, but I'm sure the whole world is kind of feeling this, the effects of it. So, but that's what's going on. Luckily, I haven't been, close to the virus, but we'll see what happens here. I'm here for another few days, and then I'll get back on the road. So hopefully, getting through the airports and getting back on planes again, things will have mellowed out. But so far, so good here being in Southeast Asia. All right, well, let's get right to this week's episode with Aya. Here we go, BBA. This episode of Jim Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast is brought to you by MG Shlachter, a built environment and architectural consulting firm with an in-house production team. Delivering support services in the retail, hospitality, and residential sectors for leading brands worldwide, MG Shlachter is reinventing, something near and dear to my heart, of course, architectural support services. Suffice it to say that whatever built environment or architectural project you're working on, MG Shlachter can step in and help accelerate your growth. So, if you're looking for a built environment and architectural services firm with an in-house production team to help you reinvent your next project, check out MG Shlachter. Find them on the web at mgshlachter.com. That's mgshlachter.com, mgshlachter.com.
Welcome to Jim Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, the show that explores reinvention in the digital age as it relates to career, creativity, and technology. Stay tuned for interviews with professionals, entrepreneurs, and creatives that have reimagined success and are making a pivot. If you'd like to listen to the entire back catalog, visit jimjimsreinventionrevolution.com for instant access. And now, here's your host, Jim Jim.
Hey everybody, this is Jim Jim, and welcome to episode 65 of Jim Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. And I'm sitting here today in Dipolog, Philippines, and I'm talking with Aya Shlachter. She's here, and we're talking... Oh, I forgot what I was going to say here. We'll try it again one more time. now I remember. Okay. Okay. Hey everybody, it's Jim. Welcome to episode 65 of Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. I'm sitting here in Dipolog, Philippines with MG Shlachter, and we're talking architectural services and hotel management and chocolate and all things about the Philippines, and also finding your stride. So Aya, welcome to the Reinvention Revolution.
Thanks for having me on your podcast, Jim. I'm an avid fan, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, she's, thank you for saying that, first of all. But, Aya is more than an avid fan. So, full disclosure, she is the brain trust and founder and CEO extraordinaire of MG Shlachter, who's the sponsor of the podcast, who's been sponsoring me for just about a year. So it was about a year ago when I first came to the Philippines, right? And I came to Cebu. I came to Manila first because you kind of have to come through Manila, spent a few days in Cebu and saw her. I guess that's your hometown. Cebu is your hometown, right?
Yeah, it's Cebu City.
Okay, Cebu City. All right. So that was amazing because we connected, and you can, maybe describe how we got connected. Well, why don't you tell that story first before we dig into some of this other stuff? So, how did we meet, and why did you start? Why were you interested in wanting to sponsor the podcast?
Well, I met you at the coworking space Launchhouse. That's based in Cleveland, Ohio, and I was at that time 3 years ago, right?
It's been a couple years, yeah.
Working from home, and I met this girl, Leah, who was my babysitter and now friend, and she had Empowered and Poised, and I enrolled my daughter in her program. She told me about the Launchhouse space. So instead of working at home, I went to Launchhouse. It's a place for entrepreneurs and startups, to work together and brainstorm and just kind of, be around like-minded people. And I met you there. And you mentioned immediately when we first met that you go to Asia every year.
Yeah,
and
this is my 5-year anniversary.
Yeah, and I said, hey, when you're in Asia, why don't you stop by the Philippines? Filipinos are known for our hospitality, and we're always so proud of our country. So I invited you over, and you showed up.
I did. I did. It was serendipity, I guess. But yeah, so that was, I remember thinking, I remember seeing you around the Launchhouse a little bit, and you were like very quiet, kind of kept to yourself. And like, I didn't know, had no interest in you or didn't know who you were or whatever for a while. I just saw you walking around. I'm not sure how when we first met, I don't remember our first meeting exactly.
I think it was in a happy hour.
Maybe it was. I don't know if Leah introduced us,
probably.
A mutual friend, but anyways, well, I want to hear more about that, how you kind of found Launchhouse, but like the early days when you first came to Cleveland in a second. But first of all, before I forget about it, I'm just thinking about this because it ties into finding your stride. How was climbing these steps this morning? And what are the steps called? There's like 3,000. We're in Dipolog. There's this big 3,000 step.
It's called Linabod Peak in Dipolog City.
Okay.
Originally, it was for the Stations of the Cross because the Philippines is, very Catholic country. So they built that, as Stations of the Cross. But then there really is a village at steps, at the 2,000 step mark. Okay. And, they continued it all the way to 3,000 steps. So you can see the view of Dipolog City, mountain views, ocean views. Right. It's quite extraordinary.
So, yeah. So this is, these are cement steps that are built like up into the forest. It's like it goes like right up the side of this mountain, like into the foliage there. So it's like you see the beginning of the steps, but quite soon after that, they're kind of covered up into the woods. So it's like you're just kind of climbing the mountain on these steps.
Endless steps, really.
Endless steps, and there's not many like flats in between the steps. It's like a lot of steps, like straight up,
It was a good start of my day.
Yeah.
Not that easy, but definitely worth it.
Yeah, and then along the way, they have these like Stations of the Cross. There's
Stations of the Cross.
14 or 16 of them, like supposedly recounting. I don't know anything about
the crucifixion and the
religion or being Catholic, right? But I think it was the Stations of the Cross when he was supposedly walking to his own crucifixion. He had to carry the cross or whatever,
exactly.
Right? So, okay.
Yeah, and I saw a bunch of horses this morning as well.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
So they're horses that actually climb up from the street level.
Yeah.
Through the 1,000, 2,000 steps up to the village to like bring goods and groceries and whatever they need up there.
Yep.
It's pretty mind-boggling, actually, kind of situation when you think about it. And there's like chickens running around and dogs and whatever. So anyways, so it's like a massive workout. So you made it to the top this morning?
Yes, I did.
Okay. How are you feeling?
Great.
Okay.
I'm pumped.
All right. Nice. All right. Good. All right. I wanted to just ask you about that if you made it to the top, because when I first got here, I had traveled from, what was it, Cleveland to San Francisco to Seoul, Korea to Bangkok, Thailand, like 24 hours in Bangkok, Thailand, then on a plane to Manila overnight, like 3:30, left at 3:30 in the morning, got into Manila at 8 in the morning, and then Manila to Dipolog, and then I got here at noon or something like that, and like within hours we were like on the steps trying to climb up those steps, and I made it to the 2,000 step mark, but I was like, I could make it to the top, but I don't want to die my first day in the Philippines, in the new island that I'm on.
Yeah, that's not part of the plan.
Yeah, that wasn't part of the plan. So I took a breather on it. But anyways, something really fun and cool to do if you're here in the Philippines. All right, well let's go let's go back to thinking about how we met and why you ended up in Cleveland. So you're originally from the Philippines and you grew up here. And so that you can talk about coming to school in the States and those kinds of things, but you were living here in the Philippines before you had moved back to Cleveland, and there was some kind of like I don't know, like challenges or different things you were going through,
right?
And I think right now, okay, that you found your stride.
I think so,
and you are really like just firing on all cylinders, and that was really interesting for me to see just over this last, let's say, 2 years or so. See it happen like right before my eyes, and I was just like,
yes,
what is going on with this girl? I mean, really, I think we found each other. I mean, I'm really grateful that we connected, and it's really fun to find someone who's like-minded and has a really open mind and is interested in learning, interested in embracing all the new kind of technology and the way the world is shifting around. And there's something about the space you're in now that is, you've got this momentum going, but it wasn't always the case. So
no. Okay, so let me
all
explain.
Right, I'll stop talking and you start talking.
My first 18 years, I was in the Philippines. I was born and raised in Cebu City. And I didn't really know what to do when it was time to go to college. I was a creative. I was sketching all the time. I wanted to be a fashion designer, actually. And it was enrollment time for college, and I didn't know what to do. So I asked my dad. I said, Dad, I think I'm going to go to fashion school. And Dad was like, you know what? Maybe you should take up architecture, because architecture is the foundation of all the arts. And when you're done with that, you can either become an architect, interior designer, artist. You can pick and choose. So I did.
Okay.
So first 18 years in the Philippines, and I spent 2 years in Manila for college. And I realized that I wanted to move to the U.S. and continue my education there. I'm a little bit of a wanderlust, and I can't sit still. I travel quite a bit. So I ended up there at 19.
Okay. To go to college.
To go to college in NJIT.
Okay.
To pursue my undergrad in architecture.
So New Jersey
Institute of Technology.
Okay.
It was an amazing experience.
All right.
Soon after, I took my master's degree in architecture and urban design, and then got my job immediately after grad school, like within 2 months. Worked for 5 years in the city, met my husband, got married, had a baby, and we realized that living in New York City, it's really hard to raise a family in New York City. And I've always wanted to come back and maybe practice urban design and try to help, the Filipinos in terms of, development and urban, strategies in housing to improve the quality of housing here. As you can see, the infrastructure is quite chaotic.
It's evolving.
It's chaotic. But anyway, moved to the Philippines in 2008. And luckily, we moved because the economy crashed.
That's true. Yeah, that's right around the time, the financial mortgage crisis, I guess they call it now.
But at that time in 2008, I already had started my consulting. I was in New York. I was consulting already with big retail brands. I was stay-at-home mom watching my daughter. Okay. And I got bored after 3 months of being home and like breastfeeding and just. Right. So at 3 months, I said, you know what? Maybe I'll take a part-time job. So I got opportunities to work in retail doing design production drawings for a big retail company.
Oh, okay.
And
That's how you got started? Was that the genesis of MG Shlachter?
yes, that's
right
the beginning
then?
of it all.
Okay.
So
Was it called MG Shlachter
no,
back then?
I was just a sole proprietor then.
Ah, okay.
So I'm at home taking care of my daughter. I think she was 4 months old.
Okay.
And a very close friend of mine asked me if I wanted to do one shop for, a set of construction documents for a big retail company. I said, sure. I did one. And I was able to roll it out 1, 2, 3, 5, I think, in 1 week. And then they were surprised at the amount of work that I did. Because
see.
what I did was I actually asked some of my friends who needed extra cash to work in my 1-bedroom apartment in Queens.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so...
Local people that were in New York at this time.
So my
Okay.
coworkers, I said, you want to make extra cash? Come over. I'll train you.
Wow, okay.
So one of the ladies was an intern in the firm that I was working in, working for, because I consulted with different companies.
Right.
So I had my own thing going on at home. My husband would come home to like 3 strangers and I have pizza and my daughter in one hand and producing all this construction documents for this big retail company.
Right.
And we were able to produce about a few hundred
Wow.
in Queens, New York, in my
Okay.
apartment.
So at this point, there's no involvement with the Philippines or
Nothing.
outsourcing or doing
Nothing.
any of that?
And
Okay.
in 2008, I was overwhelmed with watching my baby and, the future in New York with the baby.
Yeah.
I decided maybe it's time to move back and
Okay.
check it out because I'm
I mean,
stable.
you've done New York for a
like
while, right?
I have steady income from my clients. I guess I was kind of location independent already at 2008.
Okay.
Right? And I was already
Well,
supporting.
well, were you, or how did you think about moving and
I said,
continuing
I
your
can-
business? Because at
Yeah.
this time, of course, people know outsourcing has been a thing for a long time, but the location independent thing or remote work was not as big as
Yeah,
it was
it was
back
not.
then.
So I
right?
decided to move back. I said, my husband Larry, I said, why don't we move back, try it out, raise Anna there, our daughter Anna, and, we have income coming in. It has been consistent work. For that account, I was able to do around 500 retail stores
I see.
with my team in the U.S. and, 2 or 3 people in the Philippines, which I hired as independent contractors. We were doing great.
Okay, so you hired them once you moved back.
Yeah, because
Okay.
the volume went up. I
Right,
mean,
because now you're local, you were able to kind of,
Yeah,
obviously vet them
so-
out and hire them.
yeah, I was able to help because part of what my advocacy is also to provide jobs to the Filipinos. So I was happy to do that. But
Right.
then the economy crashed in 2008 and I ran out of work. So it's
Right.
perfect timing because I
Things
was
shut down,
living.
especially for retail, because you were supporting retail.
Yeah, I was supporting retail.
And so, that was I remember, everything used to be on sale, way before even Thanksgiving at all the
Right.
retail stores and the retail stores that are left now. I mean,
Right,
so many have shut
right.
down. So that must have hit you pretty hard.
Yeah,
So-
because I was doing stores for a major retail company that was doing an expansion, and their in-house architecture group they were not able to produce all the construction documents, and that's
Right.
where I came in.
Right.
I helped them produce all the documents based on their design standards. Obviously,
Right.
I need to work with the big brands' standards, and
Sure.
And it collapsed in 2008. Luckily, I was living in the Philippines at my parents' basement with my
Okay.
daughter and jobless.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
It's crazy. Well, luckily it's kind of a low cost place to live,
Yeah.
if you really don't have the cash flow happening. But
Yeah.
okay, so you move back here and your business tanks, and what are you thinking? Boy, that was a good move. Or
Okay, this is what I was thinking. I had
what,
nothing
it
else
must
to
be like
do.
a challenge, right?
I had nothing else to do. And, way back in 94, when I moved to New Jersey, NJIT, when I was in school,
Yeah.
this is a backstory. I've never told you this.
Okay.
I was doing a project, during that time in architecture school, you had to build physical models, right? And one time, the night before my exam or my presentation, I cut my finger, really bad, and I was crying. I was 19. I said, I don't want to do architecture anymore. I just want to open a chocolate cafe that's like a Starbucks. That was back in 94. That was
1994.
yeah.
Okay.
When
wow.
I was in college, I'm like, this sucks. This is so hard. Architecture, we don't sleep. And I cut my finger. I'm like, I'll just open a cafe one day because chocolate makes people happy. Right. That was in 94.
And chocolate's a thing here for sure in the Philippines, right?
So that was back there.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, fast forward 2008, I was doing nothing. So I asked, my father said, why don't you open up a cafe? I'm like, or a chocolate cafe. I said, you know what? That's a good idea. So it's owned by our family corporation, Armstrong Corporation, the chocolate cafe. It's called Tablea. So I started it. Tablea is really...
But you had the genesis for the idea, the name, the branding, all that kind of stuff, right?
I mean, my husband came up with the name.
Okay.
And Tablea really ground roasted cacao beans. And then they roast the beans, they grind it, and then they make Tablea tablets.
I see, okay.
And we make it our local Filipino chocolate. And that's, that's what I'm used to growing up. It's very minimally processed and has a very rustic texture. And it tastes really amazing. So the thing with the Tablea is it had a bad, well, not really bad, but it was only people who drank Tablea were in the streets or at home or in the markets. It was not really a glorified drink like coffee.
I see. Oh, okay, so this is a very sort of local, cultural phenomenon of drinking chocolate.
Yeah,
and it's thicker than, just for kind of U.S. or European people listening out there. We think of hot chocolate in the States.
Yeah,
this is like a thicker.
It's not necessarily thicker. It's
not
just
necessarily thicker. Describe what it is.
So you get the beans, you roast it. It's like maybe 3 or 4 times bigger than a coffee bean. You roast it, and then you grind it so many times until it forms a paste.
Okay.
That paste, you make it into round tablets, and that's your chocolate. That's as organic as it can get.
Okay.
And you mix it with water and sugar, and that's it.
That's it.
And that's served in the markets. That's served for breakfast. But it was not glorified.
I see.
And I thought that, there's a lot of coffee shops. Why can't we bring back Tablea to, mainstream and reintroduce it to the youth? Because that's our traditional drink, not coffee.
Oh,
so
okay.
that's the epiphany. And I decided to create an entire narrative on Tablea, right?
So no one was really kind of marketing this or doing it in this higher level sort of way before you started?
It was marketed, actually. Tablea was marketed to Filipino stores or Asian stores all over the world.
Okay.
Because Tablea, when you drink a cup of Tablea, it reminds you of home. Right. So this
the product was there, but the concept of like this brand of what Tablea stands for now in the Philippines and people starting to know it around the world about.
I actually jump-started the Tablea movement in the Philippines by opening up a cafe.
Right.
And, it was a really cool cafe. It looked like very modern. The idea was to reintroduce it to the youth. And, it's quite healthy.
Right. Okay.
And it tastes good.
Yeah, it does taste good. I was going to say that my experience of it anyway, it's been like a thicker thing. And I have this like Sipping Dark is one of your flavors of the Tablea brand.
Yeah.
Oh, it's awesome. So if anybody out there is listening and is in the Philippines, look for Tablea chocolate, really, because it's very good. It's a different experience than what I've had before, and it's like it's very velvety smooth.
Yeah.
Like the mouthfeel on it, and it's just a nice, rich flavor. So
yeah, so that
okay,
that's how it started.
That's how it started,
and within 2 years, we had like 7 stores.
Okay,
all
7
over
actual cafes. Right?
Kiosks and cafes.
Okay.
And maybe,
all right, so this is during the time where it's like your other business had crashed.
I had nothing
else to do.
Yeah.
You're in the basement. And you're like, I know, I'll just invent an amazing chocolate cafe brand.
Yeah, and meanwhile, me as an architect and a designer, it was really fun working with the menu board planning, the drinks and, just...
So maybe your dad was right that this architecture thing is this basis for all these arts, right?
Yes.
Because this really, it's like this was like an offshoot of, because you had this architecture experience, you knew how to design a proper store space, right?
Yes, I do have experience.
And you're very good at branding and sort of like look and feel stuff.
Right.
Which,
so it was very exciting times.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So I had a few cafes I was running at that time.
Okay.
I already had a second child. He was 10 months old. I gave birth to Ari here in the Philippines. And he was 10 months old. And, the birth of Ari is kind of like the birth of Tablea.
Right.
Around the same, we started Tablea 10 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So,
all right. So you're doing that. And what happens that you end up in Cleveland eventually?
Well,
so you're running those cafes. Everything's...
Well, it isn't always that smooth sailing. But after a few, maybe a year after Tablea, started... I got calls again from people in retail in New York City. My old
so
clients.
maybe the economy is starting to come back a
Yeah,
little
the
bit.
economy started to come back, and now this is how MG Shlachter really started.
Okay.
My previous clients in retail work for another company in retail and started calling me, and now I'm back in business. I'm back in my architecture, support service business.
Okay.
And I'm one of the biggest suppliers of one of the major retail chains in the US, and I was cranking out at my maximum around 100 shops a month.
A month designing and doing
Designing.
construction drawings and all
Yeah.
these things, all these services for these 100 retail stores.
Yeah, so now
Wow. Okay, a month.
It was quite overwhelming. I was working in the cafe and hiring people for the MG Shlachter.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very difficult, but somehow I managed
Okay.
with the help of my husband and family support.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my husband is American. He's from Cleveland. He
All right.
agreed to move to the Philippines, but he said he was going to give it 3 years to try it out
Right,
to see
okay.
if he likes
Right.
it. But
That was the deal, all right.
that was the deal. He gave it 5 years. I give
Gave it
him
5 years,
credit.
okay.
Yeah, I give
Yeah.
him credit.
All right.
And he decided that he wanted to move back to the States,
Okay.
Cleveland.
Gotcha. Okay.
So he left after 5 years. I said, you know what? Go find a job, and then we'll follow.
Okay, so he came back before you a little bit, right?
Yeah. So he found a
Okay.
job, and then that was a difficult part of my life when I had to, we were scaling up the businesses. Tablea was,
Okay, so right when you're scaling up Tablea
And MG Shlachter.
and MG Shlachter comes back online,
yeah.
this sort of disruption a little bit happens of like, oh, we need to move now.
Yeah,
So-
so it was very challenging. I was very attached to the Tablea business, although it's a family business and family owned. That was my brainchild and my baby, right?
Right.
At the same time, MG Shlachter had a team of like maybe 12 people at that time, and I was very involved in the day-to-day aspect. And I just built a new house, and I had to, within a year, create processes and systems so that I can move, sell the
right.
house, renovate the house, find managers for the cafe,
I see, yeah.
and
So you were kind of forced in a way to become location independent. Like
Yes.
almost on the spot, or
Yeah.
like within probably 6 months or whatever. Like, hey, I got to figure out how
yeah,
to move somewhere else and still manage all my teams and do all
Yeah.
this stuff. That's pretty interesting.
it is very difficult because I had 2 kids,
Yeah.
3 businesses, because I have another business that I invested in, but it's, I'm an investor in that business, but
Okay.
it was quite overwhelming,
Yeah, I'm sure.
but I managed.
But well, I guess the good thing, I guess, at that
Yeah.
time too, is that all along the obviously the internet was developing, all the systems, all like the Zoom and Skype and all these ways to connect and stay really connected to your
Right.
teams. Obviously,
Right.
are now here,
Yeah.
so that was helped you out, I guess, along the way. But so all right, so you end up back in Cleveland,
Yeah.
and where were you then? Like just like your kind of headspace of like, okay, I'm back in Cleveland. I don't really know anybody. I'm trying to manage my teams remotely now for real. What did it feel like then?
So my life in the Philippines was quite exciting. I was running my cafe business during the day. In the afternoon, I would go to my office, my MG Shlachter office, and I was like training for my triathlons because I was an active triathlete then.
Okay. And
But I felt like I was just getting started, not getting started, but ramping up. And ever since I came back in 2008, I kind of lost touch with people, and now I'm gaining new friendships. So when we moved to Cleveland, it was 2008, like 13.
okay.
So I've already established friendships in the triathlon world, in the cafe business, and I was traveling quite a bit. Like I would go to Hong Kong for a meeting in the morning, come back at night. I was jet setting, would go to Singapore, and my life was like, I had my
Right.
family, my kids, my triathlon. It was very exciting times,
Right. Yeah, you're like, okay, this thing's starting to rock a little bit. Yeah.
But
You're
then,
like just starting to get into a groove, and then it's
yeah.
like, okay, wait
and
a
at this
second.
point, I'm like 12 years in my career, So, I already did I already paid my dues when I was working after grad school.
Right.
I kind of have had a little more confidence in my capacity to lead. So, and I was just getting started then.
Right.
And yeah, so when we made a deal with my husband that we'll move back, obviously. So I end up in Cleveland, Ohio, in
Okay.
Beechwood.
And so what's your impression or feeling like when you show up there? Is very different than being in the Philippines and having all
I've
the support.
always liked Cleveland to visit.
Okay.
You know, 'cause
and you've been there a few times because
I've been there like, every year. I've been with Larry
with your
for like
husband.
almost 20 years.
Okay,
So
yeah.
we've been going there every year. And
so
I
you know
love,
a little bit about it.
I love the West Side Market.
Yeah.
I love it's very
Right.
a really cool city to live in. But I could not imagine myself living there because, first of all, I don't have roots in Cleveland. I
Right.
don't have friends. And being Filipino, we're very, we like people. Like,
Right.
I always want to hang out with my friends, my family, my brothers, my parents. I'm always surrounded with, people constantly. So I moved to Cleveland and I was completely alone. My in-laws live there, but,
Right.
we don't really hang out on a daily basis. My husband
And
went
Larry's
to work.
working every day, right? So
Husband went to work and my kids went to school. And I was like, oh my God.
right. You were like a desperate housewife.
Yeah, I'm like, I mean, it sounds cool now, but I really had a tough transition.
Yeah.
I mean, it was difficult, really. I may have been depressed. I don't know.
Yeah, well, certainly there's an element of that,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it was hard
You're
getting
thinking
up
maybe
in the
questioning,
morning.
like, oh, am I really doing this?
It's hard
is
getting
this
up
the right
in the
thing to
morning,
do? Right.
not knowing what to do. At this point,
Right.
MG Shlachter, I already established processes and systems in place.
Okay.
So everything was semi-automated. So, and my team already knew what to do. So
Right.
they didn't really need me that much. But being isolated and alone in in Cleveland,
Yeah.
it was very lonely
Right.
and, very dark in the first year.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I gotcha. So, all right. So you get into that, and one of the ways that you started getting yourself connected to, the whatever bigger community in Cleveland there was through your daughter, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Um.
Well, I met a bunch of friends.
Yeah.
I started the first people I wanted to meet were triathletes and people,
Okay.
who
Oh,
were
so
in-
you were still doing that back then. You were still
I was
trying to
still
run
training.
races.
I mean, I'm a very healthy person. I like to exercise a lot. And so, I had a lot of time to exercise, but I can't really exercise 6 hours a day when my kids are in school. So I tried to I joined meetups and met, went to biking group.
Right.
And I met, a triathlon coach. So, I still kept, tried to stay healthy, but that's not enough, right? So I'm obsessed with bikes. So I went to a bike store and applied as a bike mechanic. I'm not kidding. I went to a bike store in Cleveland because I had nothing much to do during the day after working out. So I
Right.
went to the bike store and said, hey, if you need a bike mechanic, call me.
Okay.
But they never called.
They never
I think
called
they
you?
saw my card that, that I have my own.
I'm glad they didn't call you because I might not have met you then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You would have been working in the bike shop.
I was also doing makeup too. Like I started doing makeup for, for weddings and
Yeah.
stuff as a hobby. I just tried to keep busy
Right.
because I wasn't really in the brain space of expansion because I was already busy. Like I had, a good income coming in from, the retail business.
Right. Right.
So
Well, I guess this is one of the things I was trying to, I guess when I think back about, I've just known you a couple of years and seen this kind of transformation or reinvention, I guess. We're on the reinvention revolution here, but where your mind space, I mean, I think you can, people listening out there can tell, like, I don't think you perceived yourself as this maybe larger, grander entrepreneur. You're just like running your businesses and you're like, I need something to do. And you're like, very sort of humble in a way where you're like, yeah, I'll work in a bike shop or I'll do makeup. Like it was pretty interesting headspace that now I think you're in. Like, how did this start to change for you? Like,
well, I had,
because you were kind of like,
I have to see, the thing is, I was doing 100 shops a month for this company.
yeah,
And which was good because it gave me a steady stream of income and
Yeah.
cash flow. So that was fine. But I realized, so my first 2 years in the US, I was like doing makeup, going to the bike store, going to the gym just to,
I mean, fill up your day. You're
to
like,
fill up my
by
day.
yourself or
And
whatever.
I was quite lonely and I wanted to do something that was exciting to me.
Right.
And then I realized, so my husband said, hey, Aya, did you know that our job pipeline is now down to 50 a month? And we have a huge I had
Okay.
this huge staff to support.
Oh, I see. Right.
Because I was forced as an entrepreneur because things just fell into my lap,
Right,
and I
right.
had to scale up. I'm an architect and a creative, and my headspace was, okay, I'll deliver as much as I can to one client. Never put your eggs in one basket, to all the entrepreneurs out there.
Right.
So I had to scramble. It was out of necessity that
Okay,
I
so things
snapped
started
out.
to change. Okay.
Yeah, I snapped
Is
out
that
of
really what
my-
started snapping you out of like?
Yeah, I'm like, oh, okay, I have like a full staff.
Okay.
I'm out here in Cleveland biking, doing makeup, and going to the gym. That's
crazy.
really not that responsible, but
Right.
that.
Right.
But that was part of my awakening and reinvention, and
Right.
my journey as an entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah.
Really, so I decided to start working and find more clients.
Okay. All right. And maybe I think part of it was just due to this transition of moving.
Yes,
You're in
yes.
such a different environment. Like it takes you a while to kind of get your bearings a little bit
Yeah.
and just meet people. Like I've moved around a bunch. When I left General Motors, like this goes back to late 90s or so, I started moving, and I moved like every 2 years. And I found that it takes you about 2 years living in one location to actually start to develop decent friends. Like new
it
friends
took
that are there.
around 3 years.
Yeah, to me, it's like just about the 2 year mark is when you're starting to get comfortable and familiar with people, and they like you. Like they let you into their circle,
Yeah.
whatever. Especially because I moved to the Northeast, which is very different,
Yeah.
just culturally than the Midwest.
Yeah, because
And,
half of my life was spent in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I moved to New York City after the Philippines, it would have been a different story.
Right.
But
'Cause you
Cleveland,
had
I
some
didn't know if
friends
I would
already.
meet the people that, anyone that, what's the word? Just, my tribe,
Just
basically.
like-minded people,
Yeah,
yeah.
like-minded people.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know anyone who would do triathlon in Cleveland. I mean, it's quite cold there.
Right. Right.
So there's, no open water swimming, but,
Yeah, right.
apparently there is in Lake Erie. So
Yeah, Lake Erie, they
that's
do
good.
it. There's
Yeah.
a triathlon, I think, in August or September. I
Oh,
think.
yeah.
Every year there. But yeah, not like being in the Philippines or whatever.
Right.
Certainly. Well, cool. So, all right. So you kind of start to snap out of it a little bit. Let's say.
Yeah, that's the right word.
Right.
Snap
Okay.
out
You're
of
like,
it.
what was I doing
I
all
woke
this
up.
time? Right. You woke up and you're like thinking, like, all right, I got to get more motivated or find more clients again. Is that why your mind was open when maybe you met Leah and she suggested, hey, you should come to the Launchhouse and start hanging out, or how did that start to bubble up?
Leo came second. I met this girl, Gina Pobleta. She, we used to hike together. She's a life coach or a career coach. And she was a friend, and we were hiking in Akron one day, and she said, hey, Aya, nothing will happen if you hide in your basement.
Right.
She said that, and
Right.
I'm like, you're very talented, and, it seems like there's a lot going on in your world.
Right.
In architecture and Tablea, but maybe, nothing will happen if you hide in your basement. So that was like the start, and I kept on thinking, she's absolutely right. Like, how will I meet people? I mean, I'm complaining about I have no friends, but it's kind of my fault because I worked from home.
Right. Yeah.
So fast forward, a year later, I met Leah, who, run Empowered and Poised, and she, introduced me to the Launchhouse. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you did, because then I got to run into you and meet you, and it's been fun getting to know you. It's been fun having you sponsor the podcast and talk about all the businesses you're doing. Like I want to get to a couple other ones before I get to some of our final questions here, because you just have a lot going on, and I'm excited to maybe do some other work for you this year. We'll see if that happens or not. But one of the things is that right now, where we're doing this recording this podcast right now, we are sitting in my room that you graciously offered me because I came to visit you in Dipolog, of the Ariana Hotel.
Yes.
So talk about this hotel chain that you helped design and develop, and
I
your
didn't
family's. Tell me about
yeah.
your role in it and how you see that going forward.
So my parents, they own Arms and Corporation, and this is their hotel,
Okay.
Ariana. It's named after my kids, Ari and Anna.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
So
love that story.
my dad retired from, he's a publisher, a newspaperman. He retired and decided to come to Dipolog City. And he said, you know what? maybe we should open a hotel in his retirement. So
In his retirement, okay.
so now it's quite a nice hotel. And he had asked me, Aya, can you design the hotel? And I said, you know what? I'm an architectural designer, but hospitality is not my area of expertise.
Okay.
So I said, I'm not going to design it, but I will help you form the project team. So I was already helping the family business, with the, developing the team to build Ariana. Like I helped find the architect, the interior designer, as well as our chef, the chef that would train people. So I really helped the family build a team.
I see.
So that's
Cool.
That's
and now,
how it started.
And now you're working on potentially an expansion, maybe of the Ariana brand, or maybe a different concept, but it's right out back here, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's why I'm here.
Okay.
To do some site visits and talk, really.
All right. Start conceptualizing, like
Yeah,
what
the expansion.
What could or would this
Yeah.
thing be? Okay.
Yeah. Right now we have 40 rooms, I believe, and then we have to expand to another 40.
I see.
So, just checking it out.
Right. Okay. Well, that's another thing. And in the hotel, there's out front, there's a Tablea cafe.
Yes.
So, if you're in the neighborhood in Dipolog, stop by the cafe. So that was cool. I kind of forgot, I didn't forget, but wasn't thinking about it when I pulled up from the airport. I was excited to see this Ariana Hotel that you had told me about. And I totally forgot about Tablea for the moment. And we pull up and I see like there's a Tablea cafe like right in the front. I'm like, oh my God, this is, of course, this like makes total sense, like,
Yes.
I was like, that's really cool. So it was fun for me just to see how that all kind of fits together, all the things that you do fit together, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So pretty cool there. All right, well, we have, one more thing. Okay, so there's so many things, different little business aspects that you're doing. Maybe talk about a little bit, because, the last, or 2 episodes ago now, by the time this one is released, I talked to Mitch Shlachter, who's the founder of Audimute, and I was able to connect you guys to audit you and Mitch together, because I knew you guys had some, skill sets and services and stuff that you guys could both benefit from. Tell me what it's been like to work with him a little bit, and maybe a little bit more about what MG Shlachter does, like all the offerings that MG Shlachter offers.
So MG Shlachter is undergoing, transformation, as and a pivot and subcategorizing.
Okay.
Because in the beginning, MG Shlachter was a support service company, meaning we would work with architects and interior designers, help support them with their documentation. So working with Mitch, he's an amazing person and very dynamic. You should listen to the other podcast.
Yeah, he's a whirlwind, man,
I love working with him. So he installs sound panels, and it's an amazing product. And he asked me to help him first do just drafting DXF files, cut files for the, whatever he needed to produce some of the panels. And then later he realized that a lot of his clients needed some design support, not only architecture or drafting support. So Mitch has asked me to help, visualize a space, a lobby in a school, to utilize his panels.
Mm-hmm.
And now MG Shlachter now is beginning to offer, some design support for interior work with Audimute. And, working with him has been amazing, because we're not only making the space pretty, but also we're solving a sound problem, which a lot of architects unfortunately miss. And it becomes a Band-Aid solution in the end, when being in a restaurant becomes so stressful because you're screaming at your date or the person you're talking to.
Right, exactly.
Right. So that's
Yeah, it really is a great wellness kind of effort too.
Yes.
And it fits into all the other stuff you're doing. That's what's so fun for me to kind of witness all this stuff kind of come together, because you're thinking like, oh, I could use that stuff for Tablea or the hotel lobbies that you're maybe going to be working on, or all these other things, right? You see the uses and applications of it. And it's really cool that you're able to, when you say design, just so people understand out there, it really means that front end creative, meaning like colors, look and feel, like the whole kind of thing.
Yes.
Because, for something that can be so customized, like these sound solutions, sometimes when customers know they need something, it's hard for them to visualize it within their own space.
Right.
They need help with that.
Yeah.
And that's what you're good in terms of like taking something from a clean sheet of paper and saying like, hey, I know how to apply this properly and I know what's required, but here's also the creative part that gives it that look and feel.
And Mitch and I really work hand in hand. He would tell me, how many % coverage. I really can't like go crazy with a design because it could be overkill and it might not sound well. Right. So it is really a great learning experience.
Yeah.
Oh,
of course. Well, yeah, exactly. Obviously there's requirements to each design for each customer, but the one thing I just, it's just about us connecting and how we think about the world and how to offer services is that you're willing to be open to providing and having the vision of what's required without having someone to direct you, and hold your hand and give you very specific directions. Basically, I know you've had this experience with Mitch where he says like, I'm thinking something about like this. He makes a little hand sketch and you come back with like
the complete opposite.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe the complete opposite because it's like, Mitch, you're the designer. He's not the designer, but
that's the value
but you're able to have that vision that, because I've worked with many people, many suppliers, many people outsource, many consultants that they'll be high-level subject matter experts, but they don't have the creative vision to kind of fill in the blanks and say, I hear what you're saying. I've got this experience. I know how to really solve this problem and vision how to solve the problem. So that's why I like you. Okay. Because that's what I like to do for the clients I work with, with Jimmy Group and all the stuff I've been doing. But anyways, all right. Well, thanks for describing that because it's just fun for me. This is some of the stuff I've been kind of pivoting my own business with Jimmy Group, my consulting stuff of trying to connect people, trying to create deals and trying to, when I see these people that can really benefit from each other, it's fun for me to connect them and, just unleash value for everybody. So that's pretty cool. That I'm like, I get to see this right up close. All right, well, we got a few minutes left, but before we get out of here, there's always a few questions I like to ask people that come on the podcast, and one is in terms of now that you're sort of, you've been able to kind of, get in stride with all this stuff, right? Like you're really like coming into like a nice pace, like everything's starting to come together, and part of this thing is because of your location independence, I think, and your embracing of new technologies and kind of the digital world, and even doing this podcast, for example. Okay, so you've been sponsoring the podcast for a year, and I know it's taken you some time to expand your mindset about social media and about technologies. I mean, that's one of the reasons why you were drawn to me, I think, because of how I think and perceive them, and you kind of have that gut feeling like this is the way to go. The rudder's got to start turning this way for future things, even like we're discussing. So, how do you think about the role of technology and how you view it today?
Well, first of all, I'm one of those people who I don't post on social media. When I moved to the States, I didn't exist because I was not on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram. I barely, maybe very minimum. Right. And I met my business development manager in Launchhouse. Mm-hmm. That's how it all started. And my business development manager said, you know what, Aya, you need to go out, go to events, network, and post. And I'm like, no, I'm very shy. I'm a strategic thinker. I like to work in the background. But he said, you got to do it. So I did. Started posting, writing articles, creating blog posts. And it worked. So it opened my mind. It is I'm not a social, I don't like going to parties or meeting new people because, I like hanging out with my existing friends. Right. But I learned to be uncomfortable in scenarios where I don't know people in a networking event. Right. So I think I've gotten used to it. So when I met you and, you had a podcast, I'm like, that could be interesting, a different avenue for change and, reinvention. Right. To see what the podcast can do for the company. And, that's how we got, started.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that's a journey that a lot of people need to take. Right. You know what I mean? And, whether they think they need it, I guess, is a different maybe question. But I think if you're, in the business world and you're trying to be an entrepreneur and you're trying to connect and network, that the digital part is something you have to really pay attention to. Right?
Yes, definitely.
I mean, you could be like that guy that doesn't want to do it, or or you have so much inbound already because of your reputation out there, where you maybe don't need to do it as much. But if you're not in that situation and you're trying to grow, I think it's just a way to create amazing relationships and opportunities because of it.
The digital media and being on social media and just being on an online presence is a necessity, right?
Right.
I mean, you don't exist if you're not online. So that's how it started.
Okay. Well, thinking of that and thinking about the what got you motivated, I guess, in the first place, of like, oh man, I need some more clients or whatever. So, you started like thinking like, I got to kind of get back in the groove here of business development and doing newer things. But it takes kind of a different mindset and an open type of mindset to be open to, posting on social media when you're very uncomfortable, or going to that networking event, or writing a blog post, right? These are like weird things that you didn't normally have to do years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
So what are the things that you do, or how do you keep your mind open to all this, reinvention and pivoting?
So I read a lot. Mm-hmm. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs. I surround myself with people who are smarter than myself, like you.
Okay.
And I'm always looking for blind spots, right? Because I don't know anything, and being humble is really important for me, that I know that I don't know everything. Mm-hmm. So I rely on, a really good leadership team, which I've established over the last 2 years. So that's one thing that started all this. And also right now retail apparently is not doing that great. So I have to go to another pivot. And, now my company is known for retail and hospitality. So I immediately started the pivot to hospitality. I used to go to a lot of I go to this conference called HD Expo, Hospitality Design Expo in Vegas.
Right.
And I realized that hospitality is big in the US and worldwide because people are traveling more.
Right.
And apparently,
I think they're looking for more experiences too,
yes,
versus spending on retail. Even though retail's changed, right?
Yeah.
And all the design requirements for the brick and mortar stores are not there because there's no more brick and mortar stores, right? So
now, again, it's a pivot. I'm being responsible and doing advanced thinking that, now that I have a bigger team and, I have a team in New York City, in Atlanta, in Cleveland, and I have remote workers in Finland and Mexico.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah.
Love that.
So I decided to go to the HD Expo and see what the hospitality industry was like. And I realized that there are 500,000, in one of the events or the lectures, there's 500,000 rooms and renovations in hospitality in the US alone. So 500,000 rooms. And I'm like, oh, okay. So hospitality is a great space to be.
Right.
And now that's why right now, running back full circle, I'm really deep in the hospitality. I go to hospitality conferences. I went recently to New Orleans to the Independent Lodging Congress for boutique hotels. And I'm learning as much as I can in hospitality, which is why, I took on this job in Ariana to design the hotel. Because I feel like after years of, learning and practice, being in a lot of a lot of hotels and being in hospitality space, I'm capable of, designing this new expansion.
So
that's the pivot.
Yeah,
it's from retail to hospitality.
Okay, now this all makes sense.
Yes.
Why we went to Dakak.
Dakak.
Yeah. Sorry, I got to get the name right. Dakak.
Yeah.
Okay, which is this amazing spa and what do you call this thing?
It's a resort.
It's a resort. Yeah, resort. Okay, yeah. I don't even know what the names of these things are because they're not as prevalent, I guess, where we are in the States, in the Midwest, in Cleveland. But in the Philippines and in Asia, there's tons of them, and they're way over the top, like amazing hospitality kind of places, right? And so how did you like Dakak? We spent the whole day there yesterday.
Yes. Well, I try to visit as many hotels as I can, because it's part of my research also. Right. So, it was really nice. I've been going to that resort for the last 20 years because I spent summers here in Dipolog when I was growing up. And years ago, Dakak was new. And, it was at that time a very nice resort, white sand beaches. But now they've expanded. They have a really high-end place called Hugo's with amazing villas overlooking the water. the ocean. They have an amazing spa, private cove. So I really like checking out, nice resorts.
Yeah, it was
And
it
I'm
was
a
a good
beach
choice.
person.
It was a good
So-
choice, I'll tell you that much. So we went to the private one, and we went to the sand beach, the regular beach, I guess, which
Yeah.
is beautiful white sand.
Yeah, and then
And it was totally mellow. The water was totally mellow, and it was just awesome. It was almost like we were there. It was like we rented out the place for ourselves almost.
Yeah,
There
'cause
wasn't,
it's
wasn't
low
that many
season,
people.
so-
Right, it's low season. And then we went to the opposite side that's got all the special villas and the spa and
it was really nice. The
private beach and the waterfall.
and they
oh
gave
my
us a
God.
private tour of all the
Yeah.
F&B facilities and
Yes.
the rooms.
Yeah, it was.
So that
The
was
rooms
great.
were amazing. Where you walk into the one special room, if you wanted to stay there as like a, I don't know, maybe a honeymoon couple or a whatever weekend away with your friends, where it was like you walk in, it was like a beautiful room, big, king size bed, and it was like, wow, this looks amazing. And there was, and just the direct opposite wall was the the blackout curtains that you normally see. It's the hotel room, but it's like a beautiful hotel room, like all the mini bar, everything was like way over the top, just looking at the room. And then I was going to like, well, let me see what the view looks like. I wanted to see what the view looks like. And before I could run over to the curtains and move them with my hand, the guy that was showing us around, Jimwell was his name, right?
Jimwell, yeah.
Jimwell was showing us around. He had picked up a remote. I didn't even know that you could have a remote for the curtains.
Yes.
And he started opening the curtains with the remote, and behind the curtains it was like the reveal, like voila. And there was like a hot tub. What do you call that thing?
Yeah, it's like a jacuzzi.
A jacuzzi tub with that fit two people.
Or probably four.
Yeah, right
It's
on.
quite
Yeah, probably
big,
four. Yeah, it was quite big. Yeah, it could probably fit four in
overlooking
there.
the amazing view.
Overlooking the
of
amazing
Dakak.
view of
Yeah.
the water, the crystal clear blue water, and it was like this private balcony or whatever
Yeah.
with a jacuzzi tub on the balcony. I was just like, okay, this is crazy. So that's the kind of stuff you find here in the Philippines when you go to these spas and stuff. But that was, anyways, I just want to say thank you and for taking me there. It was a good choice, and I could
glad
see why you go there, and that's just why we like hang out with each other. But
Well, I like to go to the beach, any beach,
Right.
whether it's a 5-star resort or no resort.
yeah, exactly, right.
Right.
But it was well worth the experience of just kind of getting that perspective of like, oh, yeah, there's a lot of things you can do.
Yeah,
with
I'm
all this
trying to
stuff.
promote the Philippines.
Yeah, exactly.
Invite all my friends
well, that's why I
over.
want to talk
Yeah.
about it, because I know that's what you like to do. And
Yeah.
this is my first time in Dipolog. First time to the Philippines. I came last year to Cebu. So it's my second time overall, and we're going back to Cebu, I guess today.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. We should wrap this up soon here, I guess.
Yeah.
And then a couple days in Cebu, and then back to Thailand for me. But anyways, before we get out of here, one last question for you. Through all these, I mean, this has been like a quite pivotal 5-year probably stint for you, and now you're kind of really coming into your stride here. Do you have a reinvention revelation that you can share with everyone about maybe like a takeaway of like what you couldn't have imagined maybe just a few years ago, and
So
an insight that you can
I'm
share with
gonna,
everyone?
that's a loaded question when you say reinvention revelation.
Yeah.
Because any decisions that I make affect like so many people,
Right.
like my family,
Right.
my staff, the businesses, right? But that's a really good question, because as a leader, you have to think about these things. But it's also very important for me to make myself happy. That's why I always, make sure that I have time to think, reflect, right, on myself and, my goals in life that will all tie to my value system.
Right.
So I realized something. There's only one thing in life that's constant, and that's change, right? But as a leader, people expect you to have clarity of vision,
Right.
right? So
Right.
as a leader, people rely on you to, to drive, the boat or whatever.
Right.
But at the same time, only one thing is constant, that's change. So that's why, I really am a fan of your podcast, because, a lot of your guests have gone through the same things that I've gone through, always pivoting and always changing. So it's managing expectations of the people around me, and how,
Oh, yeah, I like that.
how whenever I decide that I want to pivot, I have to think about the whole community, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, the pivot for this year, I have a specific answer,
Oh, okay. All right,
which
let's
is
hear
gonna make everyone happy.
it. Okay. I like
is
that.
I want to do a lot more design projects instead of architecture support. I mean, I do a lot of architecture support, but
Right.
right now I'm designing this major mall in Ormoc. It's a lifestyle mall. It's under construction. So I want to take on more design work. So in hospitality, maybe in resorts, and so that's the pivot. That's the reinvention. Go back to my creative side.
Right.
Because creativity. I've been the last 5 years. I've just been hustling and trying to get more business, but I'm trying to get back to my creative roots.
Right.
So now, number one, I have 3 pivots. Is that okay?
Okay, sure.
Okay.
What else
number
you got?
one, number one is to design more.
Okay.
In architecture and urban design, interior design, and hospitality. Number 2 is personal goals in health. Maybe start weight training and doing more yoga.
Oh, I like that.
Now I'm in my mid-40s. When you're 20 and you're doing triathlon, you can lose weight easily. But when you're 40 and above, you need to build muscle mass.
Different, yeah.
So that's the second pivot in terms of health and wellness.
Okay.
Weight training, maybe get a personal trainer and do more yoga, meditation. Really try to make myself a better person by exercising more. Because, when I'm happy, everyone else is happy around me, or I can make everyone happy around me.
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah. And number 3, it's a long shot, but it's been on my mind. Maybe, sing a little more music.
Oh, you're going to throw that out there, huh?
Yep. Why not?
Okay.
Yeah. I used to be in musical
Put that out to
theater.
the universe.
I'm very shy, but, why not?
Well, Filipinos or Filipinas, they're very musical people.
Yeah.
It's a musical culture.
Yeah.
Everybody likes to sing and loves music here. So that's another thing that speaks to me of having this opportunity to come here and connect with you and get to know the Philippines a bit, So it's been great.
Yeah. So that's it. My
Awesome.
3 pivots.
I love it. Well, just the 2 things that I heard that were really pretty interesting to me is being able to manage the expectations of people around you.
Right.
That's a really cool thing to kind of figure out as you're feeling like you need to change yourself. But also realizing that, happiness to me is kind of the key to prosperity and to moving forward in life. So if you're not happy, like success doesn't really come that quickly.
Right.
It comes actually quicker when you're happy. So I think people think they got to bear down and get serious and go through a lot of pain and stress, whatever, to climb that mountain. I think you'll actually get there faster if you're happier along the way. You know what I mean? So that's I think it comes through, with the way you're describing things. Anyways, it's been awesome having you on the podcast. If people are more interested in MG Shlachter or Tablea or Ariana or all the stuff you're doing, where would you send them? How should they connect with you?
My email address, it's in my website.
Website?
Yeah.
Okay, so mgshlachter.com.
Yes,
right?
correct.
So mgshlachter.com, right? Okay, you'll hear that on the episode. That's why I had to say it like that. But you'll hear that little advertisement on the podcast every once in a while. And thank you for the continued sponsorship. And I look forward to whatever we're able to create in 2020. We'll see.
Great. Thank you, Jim.
All right. Thank you for listening to Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. If you want to hear more, join our mailing list at jimjimsreinventionrevolution.com. See you next time. And remember, the revolution has just begun. So dig in, embrace the process of reinvention, and start realizing the success you've always dreamed of. Hey, revolutionaries, if you enjoyed today's episode and today's guest, let them know by commenting on their Facebook page, finding their Twitter handle or Instagram feed, and letting them know you heard them on Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, and tell them what you got out of the episode, what you really liked, or how they inspired you. I know they would get a kick out of it, and will help others find the same value that you found.